Good evening, everybody. Today we'll have our session on game development with Phaser. Before we get started as to what we'll be covering in this session, I have a set of questions for you. So, what picture comes to your mind when I talk about gamers?
Probably some youngsters, millennials sitting in a room playing games at nights.
that
Uh,
And
is that is
RGB
yes, yes.
lighting.
That is very true. Yeah, I mean, that's what first picture that comes to your mind, right? But there's actually 30% of the gamers nowadays are aged above 50. So you can see that games nowadays is not just for connecting with youngsters or to be famous among the young generation, right? It is also to be able to help I mean, even the elders are involved in this because games nowadays are really interesting and quite addicting to play with. So now another question. So all of you here must have played some or the other game during the pandemic, right? So if not play the game, you must have at least watched your friends, kids, or somebody around you play. So can you please tell me one such game?
PUBG.
PUBG, okay.
Rocket League.
uh,
Rocket League, yes.
Yes.
Ludo.
Ludo, yes, that is a very addicting game among friends. So anything else?
Yeah, Among Us.
Among Us, yes, I was particularly addicted to that game in the pandemic. Okay, thank you so much. So you can see there are so many different games that you can play, but we have never really gone through as to what happens behind the scenes, right? We just see an amazing, really amazing and very interactive UI, but we don't know what is happening behind the scenes. And that's what we'll be seeing today. So before that, let's go ahead and see our speakers for this session. So myself, Sasi Rekha. So hi. I'm a front-end developer and a core member in the Center of Excellence of Torrey Harris Integration Solutions. I've worked on a couple of projects using React.js. I'm also a very dedicated trainer of career step ladders and I've conducted many extensive training sessions on the latest technology. Now we have Adarsh here. Can you please introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hi, this is Adarsh. I'm a full stack developer and a core member of COE. I started my career with game development, primarily working as a game developer. I'm currently working on a few passion game projects, which will be live in few months. I have experience in building and deploying HTML5 games across different mobile web browsers.
All right. Thank you so much, Adarsh. Now let's go ahead and see what is the agenda for today. So first we'll be seeing the different use cases of gamification. So before we even know how to build games or what Phaser is, we'll have to see where these games are used because it's not just for playing normal games online on your mobile apps. It's used for so many other cases. Then we have gaming in browser. Then we'll be seeing the different HTML5 game frameworks that we have. Then we'll be talking why Phaser among all the game frameworks that is there in the latest world. And then we'll be getting and deep diving into Phaser and seeing the other properties and characteristics of it. So now let's go ahead and see the use cases of gamification. So here you can see the first one is playable ads. So you know what is gamification here? So it's nothing but the application is going to be using game design elements and game principles in a non-game context. So this can be used in ads or to help you promote your brands and so many other things. So now, in case of playable ads, you must have gone through Swiggy or any other online e-commerce website, or even while so especially in Swiggy, when you're trying to place an order, you must have seen those ads which come up, right? Which tells you if you finish playing this game, you're going to get a certain discount. So this is a way where you can help use gamification, enhance the features of your application that you have. And secondly, we have make a game based on your brand. So when you're making a game based on your brand, it's going to increase the target audience loyalty. Now, example for this is we have the Cadbury Play Pad. So this is very recently been put in the market. So this is actually a 3D VR interactive game where you have different 3D animals and 2D games. So this is used when you scan a particular QR code when you buy a Cadbury chocolate or whatever. You can scan the QR code and you can open the app to play this particular game. Then we have App Play Do, which is again by Kinder Joy. So this is a free edutainment app, and the app includes edutainment games and augmented reality experiences, visual arts and crafts, bedtime stories to read, and so much more. So you can see how addictive it would be for children who wants to purchase this chocolates and try to find the app. So it's not only to be able to get the chocolates, but you will be able to promote the particular brand through this ads that we have here. So next we'll be seeing into the K8 industries. Advantage of powerful technologies to provide live online classes to K8 learners. And they teach them on English communication, public speaking, grammar, creative writing, and so many other new age skills. And we have the next, which is the edtech industries. So here, education technology industries over here is we use, all of us use it, right? This doesn't concentrate on a specific age group. So we, even now, we as working in different companies, we use different online courses to learn better. But when gamification is involved in this, it gets even more interesting. So another example over here is the Academy LMS, which is, it is designed by Growth Engineering. So Academy LMS is built entirely around gamification. Actually, it's not an LMS that has gamification added. It's an LMS that relies on gamification to function at all. Their core features are points, badges, leaderboards, and social learning. And the image that you can see here is a feature of an online learning platform that was implemented in Tory Harris. So as you can see, we have different courses, and in each course you climb up a ladder, and you go to different levels, and at the end of a level you earn a badge or a certain points, which makes it very interesting and interesting for us to study, and we get motivated. And since you earn prizes like this, or when you see your name on the leaderboard, you tend to have a competition within yourself to do better, which is very important while you're learning as an adult, right? And so let's look into the gaming in browser. So now we talked about different online games that we have, and how we all played it during the pandemic. So now here, as we can see, browser has quickly become a viable platform. So it's not only for creating stunning and high quality games, but also for distributing these games. So as a game developer, it is important to know why are we targeting the web or the browser for your next game project. So let's look into a few of the points. So first thing is, the reach of the web is enormous. It's everywhere, right? So game built with HTML5 work on smartphones, tablets, PCs, and smart TVs. And it's independent of the operating system. So your players can play your game anywhere on any system at any time. Because the web is everywhere, your customers can check their game status on their phones, tablets, their home laptops, their work desktops, or anything else. And also sharing games online, so it becomes such a fun experience when you can share games. I played a game called Scribble. I'm not sure how many of you are aware with it. It's similar to Pictionary, where you can send the online link to everybody and they can join. It's so easy and fun, right? And another point is how marketing and discoverability is improved here. You're not limited to promoting your app on someone else's app store. Instead, you can advertise and promote your game all over the web as well as other media. So, taking advantage of the web's inherent linkability to reach out to your new customers here. And another obvious this benefit over here, you don't have to install it. You don't have to occupy the space on your laptop or your mobile phone. You can just go online and log into whichever game that you like. And you have control where it matters, payments, right, which is a very important factor that we need to consider. You don't have to hand over 30% of your revenues to someone else just because your game is in their ecosystem. Instead, you can charge whatever you want and use whatever payment processing service you like. And lastly, you get to manage your customer relationship more closely. And this is very important to all of us who wants to target our customers and get their loyalty and get more views for an app, right? So you don't have to depend on some customer feedback filtered through an app store's limited mechanisms. You can engage with your customers directly the way you want without any middleman. So this is what we have in gaming and browser. So going ahead, we'll see into the different HTML5 game frameworks that we have. So we have different frameworks here. I mean, we have mentioned only 5 of them, but there's so many more game frameworks that we have. So before we get started with Phaser, let's look into the other 4. So 3.js. Now this is a cross-browser JavaScript library and application programming interface which is used to create and display animated 3D computer graphics. So 3.js is a cross-browser JavaScript library and application programming interface which is used to create and display animated 3D computer graphics in a web browser using WebGL. And next we have the Cocos. Now this is again a mature open source cross-platform game development framework that supports 2D and 3D game creation. The engine provides rich functions such as graphics rendering, GUI, audio network, and physics, user input, and so many more. And it is widely used in game development and interactive application construction. And next is the Kiwi.js. Now, Kiwi.js is a fun and friendly open source HTML5 game engine. Some people even call it the WordPress of HTML5 game engines because it is the most initial framework most of them use when they come into the game development. And their focus is a blazingly fast WebGL rendering and complementary tools to make professional quality serious games. Now, Play Canvas WebGL. This is an open source game engine. It uses HTML5 and WebGL to run games and other interactive 3D content in all modern browsers without need for any plugin. Now, we have so many other frameworks like Babylon, Pixie, Melon. But in spite of all these famous frameworks that we have discussed, why is that Phaser has become so famous in the past? Like it released like a couple of years back, but it's become so famous in just 2 years, which is really interesting. So let's look into why has Phaser taken over all these game frameworks. So firstly, it's beginner friendly. So anybody who has a minimal knowledge of JavaScript can immediately get started in game development if they're interested. It is a fun, free, and fast 2D game framework for making HTML5 games for desktop and mobile web browsers. So it supports both Canvas and WebGL rendering. Phaser uses both Canvas and WebGL render internally and can automatically swap between them based on the browser support. So this allows for lightning fast rendering across desktop and mobile. So as I told, the only prerequisite that we have here is JavaScript, and it's very easy to get started. So I'll just walk you through the steps how easily it is to get started. So the first thing you'll have to do is download Phaser from our well-known source GitHub. And as we have been discussing, it's the only concept that you have to know is have some basic or intermediate level knowledge in JavaScript. And you'll need a code editor like VS Code, Sublime, Atom, or any other code editor of your preference. And you can discover different features when you log into their official website. You can see so many simple and amazing examples which will help you understand Phaser better. And once you are ready, you can make your own game and publish it. And that's how easy it is to get started with Phaser.
I want to talk. I want to talk about this game, which we will be. So this is a demo game which I've built it for this meetup. So I want to talk about the very basic concept, which is scene. So in Phaser, every screen that you see is a scene. The concept is analogous to the Android activity. In Android also, every screen is an activity. So in this, so this is a very simple game. So in this, we have two scenes over here. So the first is the loading screen over here that you can see, and the second is the gameplay screen. So we can have different scenes also. So the one could be the menu scene, and we can also have another scenes like the score scene. So for different purposes, we can have different scenes. So this is a very basic concept in Phaser 3. So now we have understood what a scene is. I want to talk a little about the scene lifecycle methods. So yeah, so there are three scene lifecycle methods over here. So the first is the preload method. So what the preload method does is that it will load a particular resource and it will associate a key value to that particular resource. So over here, this is the location of a particular resource, and this can be an API call or the location of the resource in your site. This could be anything. And what I'm trying to do over here is that in this preload stage, I am I'm adding this resource and I'm associating this resource with this particular key. So later in the create stage, I will be using this particular key to initialize the game object. So we have the second stage, which is the create stage. So the create stage, what it does is that it will use that particular key, and it will use the X and Y coordinate, and it will add the game object to the display list, which will then phaser 3 will render the game object according to that. So here I want to talk little about the as I've talked about that you have to give X and Y coordinate and the key value to initialize the game object to add it to the display list. Now you must think about where is the origin. So the origin is in the top left corner, which is that 0, 0 over here. So it starts from here in the top left corner. So things are clear over here.
Yes, Adarsh.
Yeah. So I have talked about the game initialization concept, and I've talked little about the coordinate system of the phaser 3, which is 0, 0 in the top left corner. And now I will simply talk about the concept of the game world. So over here, so the game world, we view the world with the help of the camera, via camera. We view the world via camera, and the world has no foundation, and it is not limited to the staging area. So over here, you can simply see that this particular canvas element is the staging area, and this over here, what you are able to see is the camera, which is actually allowing me to see the world. So right now, the camera is following this ball. So as the camera follows the ball, I'm able to see different parts of the world via camera. So this is a very basic concept of game and camera. So now let's talk about the third lifecycle method, which is the update method. So the update method is used to update the game object state, and it is called indefinitely. And if you look over here, this high, which I'm consoling it out, it is being called continuously. So that's what update method does. The game uh, updates the game object at every frame. And over here, you can actually see the frame rate over here. So this 53.5, all this thing is actually the frame rate of the game loop. So over here, as you can see that in the update method, if I quickly move to the update method, you can simply see that I am setting the text over here. So this is where mostly this update method is being used to update the game object set or game object state. So as I am collecting the coins, my score is getting updated. So yeah, this is the basics of the update method, which we have spoken about. And now I want to talk a little about the events in Phaser 3. So yeah, so let's talk about the events in Phaser 3. So Phaser 3 has uh, touch events, it has pointer events, and it has keyboard events too. So over here, this thing is basically moved with the help of by listening to the keyboard keyboard button is down or whether is not down. And over here, as you can see, this is a particular game object. And if I click on this game object, the ball kind of moves. So these are the basics of three lifecycle method. So we have a preload method, which will load a particular resource and associate a particular key to the resource. And then we have the create method, which will initialize the game object. It will add it to the display list and the game object will render. And then we have update method, which will allow us to update the game object at every frame. So things are clear as of what we have discussed now.
Yes, Adarsh, you can continue.
Yeah. So let me give you a very basic example of a game. So games, either they have some kind of collisions going on, and or either games use input, user input, uh, uh, heavily rely on user inputs. So over here, if you can clearly see that this is a game which is heavily relying on user input. So as I'm clicking on this particular game object, so here I have this, uh, as I'm clicking on this particular game object, it is actually adding a tween to this particular game object. And you can actually see over here that there are different kinds of beziers also, which you can apply to a particular tween, so that you can really use this functionality in games which rely on user inputs. Now, so the basic thing which I have understood is that uh, we have this game, and we are loading images. We are making the entire world based on that image. So now, in case of a platformer game, the game world turns out to be very big. So we can't load very big images to make a very big world. So uh, here we have the concept of tiled map. So as we have seen in Google Maps, that Google Maps doesn't load the entire map at just one single step. It will simply load the it will simply load the map with small cubes, which are nothing but tiles. So over here, I have this tile map editor. So what it does is that it will take a sprite sheet. So what is a sprite sheet? Yeah, so a sprite sheet actually will divide is is so a sprite sheet is a combination. So a sprite sheet is an image, and we can divide that particular image into different parts, and we can use that particular image to do something. So over here, I have used a sprite sheet as a tile set. So the advantage of this is that this is a very small image, and what I can do is that I can take this, click on this particular tile, and I can draw it to make the game world. So all this detail, like where this game of all these tiles has to be placed, will be stored in a JSON format, and all these images will be exported. So this allows me to make a very big world with the help of this tile map editor. Uh, Now, if we look at the tile map, we have different layers over here. So we have the ground layer, we have the clouds layer, we have the background. So this is the background, this is the clouds, this is the world, and yeah, this is the ground over here. So there is a very good reason why you should divide your tile map into different layers, because later in the stage, to add physics to a particular game, to a particular layer, it is very easy to divide your game into different layers, so that you can simply add a layer into the physics engine and use it very easily. So is this concept clear about tile map? Are we? Uh, is that sounds right? Yeah,
Yes, Adarsh.
yeah. So we have focused on the tile map editor, and also there is one more advantage of tile map, is that it divides the work of a game designer and a game developer. So a game designer can simply focus on making compelling tile maps, which a developer can simply import and use it. So this is the world which I've made for this particular game. Uh, as you can see over here. So there is a catch over here. Uh, there are few elements which are not present in the tile map, but they are actually present over here. So if we look over here, these are actually dynamically generated tiles. So in tile, so there are two kinds of layer. So one is a static layer and the second is a dynamic layer. So the advantage of dynamic layer is that you can actually put tiles programmatically. So I can, for example, this over here has been has been rendered programmatically. I'm telling the Phaser 3 to add this particular tile at this particular location of the tile map. So the advantage is that you can actually make very big world just with the help of a response from the server, or from the response from the server, or with the help of a JSON file only. So now all these things like this core and this enemy kind of thing, which is reducing its life, they all can be generated dynamically and programmatically. So you can just imagine, like if I'm getting this response from the server, we can actually make a pretty compelling game. uh, so now we have discussed about the tile map. We have discussed about the layers, the static layers, which doesn't changes at all, and the dynamic layer, which have the capability to render the tiles based on what you say. So over here, we can actually see that we have this function create a dynamic layer. So what it does is that over here, so this is a dynamic layer over here. So this dot map dot create dynamic layer. So this is the tile set which I've added, and this is the name of the layer, and these are the coordinates 0 comma 0, which is this. And just by adding this line of code, I'm able to add a dynamic layer. So we have this dot world layer, and as you can see over here that yeah, as you can see over here that uh, I am converting this tile map into I'm converting this layer into physics. I'm adding this layer into the physics world. So before I'm really dive into the physics engine, I want to talk about animations. So yeah, let's talk about animations. So Phaser 3 supports frame animation and as well as skeletal animation also. So let's discuss about what a frame animation is. So as we can see over here that we have a sprite sheet over here in which different images are different frames are actually combined. So this is the advantage of a sprite sheet. Like, so this sprite sheet can also act as a tile set for a tile map. Over here we have seen this particular sprite sheet act as a tile map for this particular map. And also over here, if you see, this sprite sheet is acting as a frame for the frame animations. So the way we do frame animation is very simple. So we have over here an image of a fire. So we have 5 images of fire which are combined. So what we do is that when we load this particular image, we will tell the phaser, okay, load this image as a sprite sheet. And what I'm telling is that I will tell it, okay, this is the frame width and the frame height of this particular frame. And you can simply and it will divide, and Phaser 3 will actually divide this particular image into different frames. And then I can use this particular key which I've assigned to this to create compelling animations. So over here, I have actually told you we need the X coordinate, we need the Y coordinate, and the key of the resource to add any game object to the display list and render it. And over here, I have created an animation. So I have used the resource and I have generated frames, and I've actually mentioned the frame rate. So let's change the frame rate to 24. And in the game, you can see over here, just wait. So in the game, you can clearly see over here that these are the two animations. So these are nothing but frame animations. All the frames are simply moving faster, and it looks like we have a moving thing. I think the concept is very much similar to a flip book. So secondly, we also have skeletal animation in Phaser 3. So in this, we have a skin and we have a skeleton, and we what we do is that we kind of combine those things to make it work. So I will simply show you a demonstration. I will simply show you a demonstration. So this is done with the help of Phaser 3 only. So this is the animation and this is the skin. You can change it and you can do all sorts of things with this Phaser 3. So Phaser 3 supports frame animation as well as skeletal animation. And yeah, let's talk about the physics engine. So there are three kinds of physics engine in Phaser 3. So we have the Arcade.js, we have the Impact.js, and we have Matter.js. So Arcade.js is the inbuilt game engine, and hello, am I audible?
Yes, Adarsh.
Yeah. So the Arcade.js is the inbuilt physics game engine of the Phaser 3. Impact.js is also a third-party thing, but it is embedded in Phaser 3. Same goes with Matter.js. It is a it's a third-party thing, but it is embedded in the Phaser 3. So you don't have to install it separately. You can simply use it. So the very basic concept of using a physics engine in a game is very simple. What we are trying to achieve over here is that we are trying to add our game objects into the physics world. So I will simply show you at the top of the code. I've initialized, as you can see, this dot matter dot world. So this physics engine has its own world, and now we have our own game object, our own world also. So what we're trying to do is that we are trying to connect a particular game object to the physics engine. So that's what we're trying to do. So what we do is that over here, I have added this particular layer into the physics engine. I have added this particular game object, this ball, into the physics engine. And what the physics engine does is that it will actually render a physics shape uh, in the uh, in the boundaries of the game object. As you can see over here, that this coin, a square shaped physics object, physics body has been is there in this particular game object. And in the ball also, if you can see that there is a circular physics body. So what we're trying to achieve is that we are trying to superimpose a physics body with a particular game object. So we have different tools for it. So if you are making a very basic game, I think Arcade.js will be sufficient for you, because with the help of that, you can make only rectangle and circular shape physics body. But if you're looking for more complex physics shapes, then you have to use Matter.js. So to do that, what you do that is that you use a third-party tool, which is a physics editor, and with the help of this tool, you can actually make a composite of physics body, and uh, you can make pretty compelling games based if you use Matter.js. Uh, is the things about physics engine clear till now? Yeah, yeah, sure.
Yes, Adarsh.
Yeah, so let's continue. So I will talk a little about the different kinds of physics bodies which we actually see in a particular game. So we have three types of physics body. So as you can see over here, yeah. So over here you can see this ball moves while the other game objects doesn't move. So the reason behind is that we have three kinds of physics body. One is a static physics body. So no matter how much velocity you apply to this body, it won't move. The second is the non-static physics body. So non-static physics body, if you apply velocity to it, it will move. And we have sensors like this coin, which won't have any effect on the velocity of the game object, but it will simply detect collisions over here. So let me give you example over here. So let's go to the this dot world layer. As you can clearly see over here that I have created this layer, and then what I will do is that I will add this layer into the physics engine. So just a minute. Yes. Yes. So what I will actually do is that I will add this particular game object or a particular layer into the physics engine, and I will actually tell it that, okay, what kind of physics body it should be. Should it be a sensor or should it be a static body, and other examples. So as we have understood the different kinds of physics body, and we have understood the implications of uh, of collisions. So let's yeah. So now I think I should talk a little about when to use ArcadeJS and Matter.js physics engine. So I guess ArcadeJS is great if you're using a physics engine. If you're trying to make a game which doesn't requires a lot of use of high-end physics, and I think Matter.js is great if you're looking for a game which requires a lot of physics in it. So over here, as you can see over here, I want to discuss a little about the logic which I've written for this ball and the coin. So what I'm doing is that I am detecting collision, and as soon as the ball and coin collision is detected, what I'm doing is that I am deleting or I'm removing this coin from the display list. I'm destroying this game object, and it appears like that, like this ball has kind of eaten this uh, a particular coin. And that's what we really do with physics engine. We detect collisions and we try to do something with it. So uh, if I have a collision with this so if I have a collision with this particular game object, like this, what I'm doing is that I am moving the camera a little bit and I'm decreasing the life. So yeah, that's the basic implementation of this game. Yeah, so let's talk about a little about Canvas and WebGL. So things are clear. So things are clear. Are you able to understand what I've discussed till now? Till now, if there are any doubts, you can ask. Yeah. So let's discuss about the Canvas renderer and the WebGL renderer. So over here, we have two options. We have something known as the canvas, and we have something known as the yeah, we have something known as the canvas, and we have something known as the WebGL. So Canvas is supported in all the mobile web browser, and WebGL 1.0 is also supported in all the modern mobile web browser. But if you're targeting people who might be using some old mobile web browser, then you should probably go with Canvas. Then, if I talk about performance, I would definitely say that WebGL 1.0 has a greater performance compared to Canvas. And usually, it's better to uh, render your game using this auto feature. So if the browser supports WebGL, then we will use WebGL, and if it doesn't support WebGL, we will move to Canvas. So now we have something known as WebGL 2.0, which has the capability to render high-end graphics. But I will definitely not recommend you to use those things if you're using Phaser 3, because there is compatibility issue, and it is very resource extensive. So yeah, is there any question? Let's talk about another tool, which is the texture packer. So this texture packer will actually allow me to make sprite sheets, and it will actually generate a JSON, and it will allow me to like build animations based on that. So yeah, if you're looking for building a texture, if you're looking for building a sprite sheet, this is a great tool to look forward. Yeah, so let's start with the enterprise to digital transformation. So a cool gamified experience motivates people to engage and learn, and this is what we have done over here. Is that as the user completes his course, he kind of move up to the ladder. So yeah, so this is a very cool thing which we can use to gamify the learning experience. And let me talk about few applications of Phaser 3. So if I look at the applications of Phaser 3, there is a very cool game which is 2020game.io. So you guys can check it out. So this is a game which is built using Phaser 3, and this uses the very same concept which we have actually discussed in this presentation. So this is also a platformer type game, and they have used tile maps to make this big game world over here. And as you can see over here, this player is a non-static physics body, and this ground is a static physics body. And yeah, they have used physics because I can see that there is some kind of collision. If we move forward in this game, we will actually see all the incidents which happened in the 2020 year. And over here, you can see that here is an animation. So this is a frame animation, which is very much similar to the thing which we have developed, which I have actually shown you. So these are nothing, just like we have different frames and they move at a very fast rate, and it looks like we have an animation. So at the same time, this game, I mean, this is a very cool way to actually know like what happened in the year 2020 game. And I think that's why a gamified learning experience is great for digital transformation, because it makes learning much more engaging. So I think the concept over here, that I'm collecting the different points, the mask and all those things, these are all based on collisions only, which we have discussed. So when this particular guy collides with this particular game object, so what they might be doing is that they might be destroying this game object and adding a score to it. So yeah, that is what they are doing, and they have used the tile map editor, tile maps to make this entire game world. Apart from this, what I've seen is that we have HTML5 games have been used widely in other applications also, mostly to build interactive experiences. And the reason that HTML5s are so great, because the steps required to play an HTML5 game is just two steps. You need a link, and you can play that game in Android WebView or iOS WebView. And because WebGL 1.0 and Canvas render is supported in Android and in iOS devices, so yeah, you can actually play it in any device. While in the case of native games, we have like we need to install the game, then we need to download it, and it's kind of an overhead if you try to like make people use the native games. And the best thing about this HTML5 games is that they are very accessible. They are accessible in almost all the modern web browsers, and you just need to click it, and uh, you can play that game. So whenever we have great accessibility, uh, this is great for marketing. So I want to discuss about a company named as GameZop. So there is a company known as GameStop, which what they actually did is that uh, they used the entire startup is actually based on the HTML5 games. So they are an HTML5 game publishing company. So what they do is that they basically monetized their free games. So let's take a use case. For example, suppose you are in a train and you want to know like what will be the next stations. So you simply open your train inquiry app, you search for the train number, and you get the details. So at this point, you will probably your work is done and you will close your applications. So there are a lot of applications which most people use like once or twice in a year. So what we can do is that now consider the second scenario. Now we have this train inquiry app. You use it to get the details of the train, and then what you did is that you used then what you can do is that you can embed an HTML5 game in the Android app, and that's what this GameStop company did. They embedded their HTML5 games in the Android app, and they will actually show some ads over there, and they will share the revenue with the app and with themselves. So this was a great way to increase app engagement. And with this unique strategy, GameStop was actually able to acquire 25 million unique users in just 4 years. So the reason the GameStop actually used this particular Phaser 3 framework, they have widely used Phaser 3, is that game development using Phaser 3 is very easy. So as you can simply see over here that it didn't took much effort to make me this particular game, because the sound library, the physics engine, all the things were actually embedded in this particular game, and it allowed me to do it at a much in a much better way. The second interesting fact about the HTML5 games is that uh, you can also embed them in this. You can actually embed them in anywhere which has a web browser. So they also have this GameStop also have this plan for this HTML5 DTH games. Uh, and the second most thing which I like about HTML5 games is that their build size. So the game which you see over here, uh, the entire build size of this game is just 2.2 MB. And even if I extend it up to like 2, 3 levels, it won't go beyond 3 MB. That's the biggest advantage of this HTML5 games. Their build size is so small, and it is very similar to like loading your profile pic, which is just like 2, 3 MB. And the GameStop company, what they were able to do is that they were able to embed around 150 games, 150 HTML5 games in just 8 MB. So which was very ingenious about them. We have also seen the use of HTML5 games in other platforms like Paytm games. So they use HTML5 games because that's the biggest advantage. You can run it in an Android web view or an iOS web view. You don't have to develop it separately. And there's another company, MXPlayer. They also use HTML5 games to engage users,
And what they were actually doing is that they were used to give coupons or access to premium content if you play that game or if you win. So yeah, so these are the very cool implementations of HTML5 games. Now there is another startup. I don't remember the name specifically. So that startup, what it did is that they actually took a toy. It was a toy based company, and they used to make toys for kids. And what they did is that they actually converted their HTML5 their toy based game into an HTML5 game. And we have also seen similar things of like company toy based company moving to digital, like for example the Lego. Like they completely moved their toy industry into a more digital way. For example, we have the Lego video games, the Lego movies, and they were actually with the help of a coherent digital strategy, they were actually were able to uh, use the digital era very ingeniously. And we have also seen companies who didn't have a very great coherent digital strategy, and like Toys R Us, uh, which didn't did well in the long run. So the next session, so I hope you have understood the various use cases and the applications of Phaser 3. In the next session, so this will be a series, this meetup will be a series. So in the next session, we will deeply dive into the Facebook instant gaming. And Phaser 3 provides its own SDK to integrate easily with the Facebook instant gaming thing. So we'll talk about Facebook instant gaming. We will talk about multiplayer gaming by using Socket.io. We will also talk about playable ads, how to make playable ads in the upcoming series. So as you know, like that there are different opportunities that are available in game development, and how simple is it to develop a game yourself. So I think hope you guys are intrigued to make your own games by the end of this session. And yeah, you can actually look at this particular you can actually go at my particular this GitHub thing, and you can clone my repository uh, and dive into the code if you want to. So Shashi,
Yes,
give the
thank you so much, Adarsh, for explaining Phaser with the help of a fun game and such fun examples. I would also like to thank our co-organizers for helping us make this meetup successful. We are going to have many interesting and informative sessions like this in the near future. As you all saw, Adarsh gave us a little sneak peek into our future sessions about Facebook games and playable ads. It's only going to get even more interesting from here. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and LinkedIn to know more about our organization. You can find these links over here in the details of the meetup. You can also follow our Tori Harris meetup group for any updates or follow ups on the upcoming events. Thank you so much for being a part of this session. I really enjoyed it. I hope you all did too.